I'd just like to welcome Fred, who, those of you who don't know Fred, he's here to show us how to build a turnout and talk about it and give you all the gory details. And afterwards, if you still are afraid to build your own, Fred will give you a one-on-one if you have any questions. He's built a bunch of them and he's getting pretty good at it.
Russell, anything?
No. Once again, as I alluded to earlier, that some of the most trouble spots on anybody's layouts are the turnouts. So if they pay attention to you, they too can build them and make their layouts run much better. So Fred, just now that you've done a gazillion of these, how long does it take you to make one at home?
There's two answers to that. The short answer is I can knock one out in less than 30 minutes if I just build a single one. But I never build just one. I've got so many to build, I pretty much do them in assembly line fashion. And I'll talk more about that later. So it's hard to say this is exactly, but I know that it takes me about 30 minutes to knock one out, the basic one. All right, let's get started here. For this first part, I'm going to do a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation. And for you in the room, I've got all my gear set up over here. And yeah, it really does take a lot of gear to get there, but there's some show and tell in there also. Before I even start the slide deck, how many of you have ever scratch built a turnout? So a few hands. How many of you have scratch built one using the fast track system? 2 hands. Okay. As an instructor, that makes a big difference to me knowing that, because if I had all but one hand go up saying, we've done this before, it's like, well, okay, we're done. Well, maybe not that quick, but it would be a lot quicker. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about what all the components are. We spent a lot of time over the last year, 2 years actually, doing back to basics about road bed, about track work, about turnouts. So I don't intend to spend any time talking about the basics of what a turnout does, all the different things in there. I kind of assume that most of us know the basics at least. And there's not a quiz, but we're kind of zip past some of that. So just as Bob Franklin does, I want to set some expectations as we go in here. I do want to say that this is not the only solution to scratch building turnouts. In fact, I've got one up here we're going to talk about early on that I built as a young second lieutenant in the late 70s, and there was no fast tracks around at that point. It was all wood ties, spikes, files. Yeah. We're going to talk about some basic concepts, the basic tools that we use, and we're going to talk about some of the materials that we use also, and also how much it might or might not cost you to do some of this stuff. Whoa, where are we going? Yeah, don't worry about it. It'll be fun. And then hands-on demo. And that is really the majority of this. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on the PowerPoint stuff. And the other thing is, I know some of you have got some questions about what we're doing. Great. We got questions about process, techniques. That's great. If you have a story about how you learned how to solder when you were 2 years old or 12 years old or when you were 40 years old, we can talk about that later. I'd love to hear the stories about that and your challenges with track work, but let's do that after we get through everything here. So scratch building turnouts and other track work, that's what we're going to talk about. It is not faster than going down to your local hobby shop or online retailer and buying a turnout and plopping it down. However, you're going to be happier when you get done with this. Trust me. It's also not as expensive as buying a commercial turnout, okay? Unless you find one at the train show, and I'd be really suspect if I bought one secondhand. I'd probably spend as much time tuning it, tweaking it, as I would scratch building to begin with if I bought one secondhand. Okay, Cecil's back there going, yep. It can be more precise and more reliable than commercial turnouts. Why do I say can instead of will? How much time and effort are you going to put into it? How much craftsmanship are you going to put into this solution? If you just want to knock it out, you might as well go to the store and buy one. But if you want to take the time and learn how to do it and do it right, you're going to be really happy with these things. It is faster and easier, than not using the fast track tools, okay? Again, I've got a sample up here. I've got a slide coming up in a few minutes. That took me a long time to do. The fast track tools make things go quicker, and it helps you keep things engaged a lot easier than just using the 3-point track tools to do that. Not that you can't, I obviously did. It can help you meet the scratch building requirements for the AP, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And some model railroaders just enjoy this part of the hobby. You know, I'm kind of like Stephen Priest when it comes to this. Stephen loves building scratch building turnouts and track work. I do too. I enjoy this way more than I do building bench work. I'll tell you that much. To qualify for the AP for civil engineer, there are several things you must do. What we're going to focus on today is just the part that says scratch build 3 different types of track work. If you're an N-scale model railroader, you identify as an N-scaler. It doesn't matter what scale you scratch build. Rick did G gauge. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I would challenge you though, probably not 1-to-1. Okay? But if you want to do that, you know, more power to you. If you want to do it, I want to see you out there with the files. Okay. But you got to do 3 different types of track work. If you do a turnout, it's the basic piece of track work. Do a turnout. A crossover is nothing more than 2 turnouts that are connected on the diverging track. Learn how to do a turnout. Make sure that's good. Do turnouts, connect them together. You got 2 done. Now you built 3 turnouts, but you've got 2 pieces of track work done. And then I suggest doing a gauntlet track or a scale track. And we've talked about that in a back to basics. If you want to know more about the difference between the 2, talk to me after we get done. But basically, one is point diverging and the other one is frog diverging, going to one track to 2 track to 2 tracks to 1. Talk to me later. But you know what it is? A scale track or gauntlet track? It's 2 turnouts connected either with points or with frogs. So in essence, you build kind of half a turnout on either end. How many total turnouts have you built now? About 5. Build 1, and it's kind of the stair step to the rest. If you do any of those others, good for you. More power to you. If you want me to help you, this is what we're going to do. Okay. As I said, it's not the only solution. This article came out in March of 1977 from Model Rotor, and I read it with great interest. Ultra reliable hand-laid turnout. That sounded way cool. And I looked at it, and I was in Germany at the time. I had a friend coming back to the US, and I said, you know what? Why don't you stop at a hobby shop? And I know where this person was going. I said, stop at this hobby shop and pick up this list of supplies. Supplies came back, and this is what I built. No, that's not what I built. I built a little layout. I built a little switch, actually 2 modules that went together. It was like 2 foot by 4 foot, a total of 2 foot by 8 foot, all hand-laid track. There was no fast tracks around at that time. And you guys can take a look at this thing. I'll pass it around real quick, but this is part of what remains of it. And as you look at this, you can see, you can grab this piece of wire here, and that's the throw bar, and you can see how smooth this thing is. The one thing 2 things I'm sad about. One is that I used a really crappy soldering iron to do this, but you know what? Oh, well, it worked. The other thing is the move from Fort Sill to Fort Ord destroyed the layout. It made it fine from Germany to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, but from Oklahoma to California, oh no, those American movers could not handle it. When they unwrapped this thing, it looked like Joe Martin's tornado modules, quite honestly. Okay, there was track all over the place. So if you want to pass that around, that's fine. So that's all hand laid, all with just files and pliers and spikes, and yeah, it can be done. So let's go talk about the basic stuff. Again, turnouts, whatever. So what you want to build is on the left side of the screen. What you use to do it is kind of on the right side of the screen. The idea is with the fast tracks, not a template, it's a fixture. You can call it whatever you want to, okay? But fast tracks calls it a fixture. What you do is you take PC board ties, PC board, fiberglass with copper on the top and bottom, okay? You cut them to size and they fit into all of those slots. And then you cut and file the rail and the rail is soldered to those PC board ties. That's what locks it in gauge. So you don't have to use those little 3-point things that I did back, when I was a young second lieutenant and scratch building that stuff. That's the basics of it. Okay. Now, whether you add the wood ties or not, that's up to you. If you're going to put it on the layout where it's open and everybody can see it, you're probably going to want to put the wood ties on it. There are a couple different ways to do that. We'll talk about that. But Bob Weinheimer, for example, has probably 20 of these things in staging. He doesn't have any ties on it. It's in staging. It's hidden. Who cares? It's out in the garage or underneath Pittsburgh Yard or something like that. It doesn't matter. So you don't have to do that. And of course, if you don't do that, it's going to be a little less expensive. We use 2 basic tools to create these things. To create the points, we use something called a point form tool. There it says, point form. 6 is for number 6 turnout, and there's a number 8 and a number 4 and a number whatever. It's code 70 to 100, and it's from Fast Tracks. So one at the end of this, you slide the rail in, you file it off, you take it out. Yeah, that's sharp. That'll hurt you, won't it, Stan?
Sure will.
You sure will. Okay. And you've got the points form. Okay. The other end of it is for the frog. So again, you slide the rail in, you file it off, and you're going to get a different angle on it because the frog's like this and the points are like this. Okay. And you can do some soldering and some other stuff, but that's the basics of it. Then for the stock rails or the closer rail, whatever, for the straight rails, okay, for on either side, what you need to do is cut a notch in those so those points can slide in there. Does that make sense? So you've got this long rail on the outside, you got the points that slide back and forth, and when the points come over, they need to slide in there tight. So that they slide in tight, you got to cut some or file some away from that straight rail, and the stockade will do that. Division 8 has all this stuff. Now, what you see here is all my stuff. I'm scratch building all the turnouts for my land. I'm not going to go to Mike every couple of weeks and say, I need to borrow it again. I need to borrow it again. Screw that. I've got it down in the basement. This stuff is always out and I'm always building turnouts here and there. And sometimes I go down there for 30 minutes and that's it. Sometimes I go down and Barb will have to say, it's time for bed. It's 2 a.m. Come on, dude. Okay. Probably not 2 a.m, but you get the idea. I'm doing enough of this that I have my own set, but Division 8 has it. Okay. You can borrow all this stuff. These are the 2 most important tools as far as I'm concerned. The point form and the stockade. If I'd have had those as a young lieutenant and not even the big flat piece of aluminum, man, my life would have been so much easier because that was the hard part. All right. Wow. If you go to the Fast Tracks website, this is what they recommend you have. Okay. I'm going to say you don't need those 2 things, plyo bond and the jeweler's saw, and I'll tell you why in a few slides, okay? So you probably have most of this if you've laid any track at all, because what do we got in there? We got a soldering iron, we got some solder, we got some wire, rail cutters and things like that. You probably got that stuff. You may or may not have some of these. You might not have the small files, and I'm going to talk about those when we get in there. You might not have some of the micro brushes, and the wire brush and a couple other things. Yeah, you might not. And you probably, I can pretty much guarantee, unless you're scratch building track work using the Fast Track system, you probably don't have this stuff. And some of these are expendables, some are not. We'll talk about more of them when we get through there. So don't freak out when you look at that and say, oh my God, because you know what? If you look at this, the 3 most expensive things on there, right in the middle, number 1, just above that, 18 and 19. Those are the 3 things you get from Fast Tracks. You can get them from Division 8. You can borrow them from Division 8 at no cost. Cool? Okay. So instead of that stupid jeweler saw, I use a Dremel tool. You have to cut gaps in the rail. Okay. How are you going to do that? Well, the Fast Track solution is get this jeweler saw out. I did that twice and said, done. Tom and I looked at one another and said, we're nuts if we're going to keep doing it this way. Done. And we went out and got it. We got the Dremel tool with a cutoff. Now, I am fortunate that way back when I lived in California, I bought this Dremel tool from a hobby shop that hasn't been in business for 20 years now. Your normal Dremel tool is big, and when you put a cutoff tool on it, you can't cut straight down when you build the turnout, so it's going to be at a little bit of an angle. You're doing it for the AP, and that's all. It's probably not going to hurt your feelings. It'll be okay. Okay, it'll be okay. It hurts my feelings. So I have this flexi shaft thing So I'm able to put a straight down cut on that rail and it looks really nice. You know what? You won't even notice anyway. I use the regular cutoff wheels. I use the Ultra Slims from Dedeco. Nah, don't even bother. Fast Tracks will sell you some solder and it's fine. They'll sell you some flux also and it's fine. I happen to like this a little bit better, the Kester and then the Keg brand. Also, he didn't recommend it, but I use a multimeter to check some stuff on here before I start putting things together. And again, we'll talk about it. You're going to have sanding sticks of some sort. The ones on the left came from Sally Beauty. The ones in the middle came from Hobby Lobby, all on sale, of course. The Pliobond. If you attach the wood ties to the bottom of the rail, you got to make it stick somehow. Now you can try and solder it. Tell me how that goes. Soldering wood to metal. It won't go too well, okay? But it'll look really authentic as it gets a burn there. Yeah, don't be doing that, obviously. So what they recommend, what Fast Track recommends, is using Pliobond. And what you do is you put the Pliobond on the bottom of the rail, you put the rail down on the ties, and then you use the soldering iron to heat the rail to make the Pliobond do its chemical reaction thing. I never got it to work right. So I use this crafter's pick, which is really cheap from Hobby Lobby. It dries clear. And if I put a weight on it, like for an hour or so, it's good to go and I'm done with it. Drill bits. I have bought drill bits from a variety of places. I got these online from Amazon. They're number 59s. They're number 59s because Russ and I decided that the wire that comes with the tortoise and Blue Point turnouts is not thick enough. So we use 0.039 and the number 59s work. That's what we use. You use whatever, but we found that this works better for us. I will tell you that if you buy drill bits from Amazon, you better have a micrometer to check them.
Really?
Yep. I have gotten, I wanted 5 different sizes. I ended up getting 8 of these packages from them because I returned 3 because they're either the wrong size or the wrong number in the container. Hello. Okay, get the little micrometer out and check. It's no big deal. Okay. Oh, latex gloves. Latex gloves? Absolutely latex gloves because your hands are going to get dirty. They're going to get grungy and so forth. Bob, you got a question about process or procedure?
Harbor Freight.
Okay. Yeah, I don't go to Harbor Freight for any of my tools anymore because I don't trust them.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean,
No, I don't go there anymore. But if that makes you happy, go for it. Oh, for the latex gloves, they'd be fine. Sure. But yeah. And again, because I build so many at a time, these things come out looking black by the time I get done. So you need one of these. You need one of these. If you don't have one, go to the NMRA website and order one. It'll cost you less than anywhere else. Trust me, it will cost you way less. Even though this is all engaged, you want to check and check and check and check. And what I'm really checking is 2 things. I'm checking the flangeways and I'm checking the points. I don't worry about it being engaged because I know it's going to be. Is there a question in the back?
So, okay, what the code is this?
70. Oh, I forgot to say, yeah, that was code 70 rail.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it filed really quick. When Tom and I started doing this, we used code 100 leftover Atlas stuff. Oh, God. Are we done filing yet?
You want to try it with G-gauge?
No, no. So what's it going to cost you? It depends upon where you get the rail and so forth. Well, let's just say that you order all this stuff from Fast Tracks. Get the rail plus the PC board ties. It's going to be about $6 for each turnout. Expendables, solder, flux, micro brushes, tool wear and tear and so forth. Who knows? The quick sticks that I talked about, that's the wood ties, going to cost you $8.59 a piece. That's the most expensive part of this. But you could use just regular ties underneath it. Or you could recycle some plastic ones, I suppose, from your turnouts, plastic or flex track or whatever. It depends on what you want to do. Cut your own, I suppose. Shipping from Canada, I don't know. But it's going to cost you $14.59 or so forth, somewhere around there for a turnout. What's a Pico turnout cost at scale?
It's 30 something now,
Atlas?
20, high 20s.
Yeah. So you're going to save a little money if that's your goal. But again, there are other ways to come up with the wood turnouts, excuse me, the wood ties underneath. Just depends upon how quick and easy you want to make it. I like the quick sticks, even though they cost a little more because they just fit. And I'll show you here in a minute when we get started. If you don't do any of that stuff, if you don't do the quick sticks and you don't ship from Canada, it's going to cost you about $6 a turnout. So here's the offer I make to you. Here's the offer I make to any Division 8 member. If you want to spend a day with me, and that's what it takes, isn't it, Stan? Stan showed up about 9 o'clock and left about 7 o'clock.
Exactly.
That was AM to PM, okay?
No lunch.
And that's right, we didn't. You're right. I think we might have had some cookies, but I'm not sure. All day, Stan walked out of there with all of it done. And it all passed for his civil certificate, one day. Tom and I spent a morning, and then I said, it's on you to do the rest. And he called me at noon the next day and said, I'm done. Okay, so once you build that one turnout, it's pretty quick. But here's the offer I make to you guys. If you want to come to my house, use my stuff, I'll supply the rail, I'll supply the solder, the PC board ties, and so forth. I won't give you the quick sticks. Give me $30 to cover the cost of materials. And we'll spend the day or a couple of days together. Okay? But you got to reach out to me. I'm not going to go to each of you and say, hey, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes, sir.
I forgot what this quick stick is.
The quick sticks is this. That's the quick sticks. The quick sticks are what take this
What's that?
to this.
Yeah, laser cut ties.
Okay, it's laser cut ties. Okay, so I won't do that, but I'll do the rest. So the neat thing is you don't have to go to Fast Tracks and order the materials. You don't have to scrounge for the materials. You don't have to pay shipping or any of that crap. And trust me, shipping from Canada is not cheap, and it's $150 minimum to get free shipping from Canada. I never pay for it when I order from Fast Tracks. You can guess why, right? Yeah. I will tell you that instead of, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so that's the deal I make to you guys. Let's go do some hands-on. And I go back to being a meeting host now and change the spotlight to over there. Hey, how's that? Can you guys see my stuff? Oh, you know what? Stop the presentation.
If some of the printers that do 3D printing, you can also get ahead that those laser cuts. It might be possible to be able to get a printer that would print those out.
Oh, I actually brought that to a meeting and showed that off last year. How we had 3D printed the ties. The problem is we can't buy thin enough material to match the normal tie height. We'd have to have a big standard to do that, and it just was in the too hard box. We said,
Right, yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of cool. So you guys see this? Kind of, sort of, maybe? Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're gonna build a turnout. Whoa, we're gonna build a turnout. The first thing we do is we get some PC board material. Now, if you want to move up here, move a chair up, that's fine. Yes,
This is a question, Fast Tracks.
real quick.
Do they sell products in all gauges or?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, I mean,
okay,
Z2, I think O.
okay.
I'm not sure that they do G.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they do. Well, good.
So.
There you go.
will they-
Just Google Fast Tracks and go to the website and take a look. Absolutely. So you got a couple options here. You
Hey,
can.
Fred?
Yes.
Just a FYI, I
we
don't
put the
know
mic
if the table's bumping, and which bumps Barb's phone, but it's
No.
kind of like wiggly and,
No.
goes out of focus for a couple seconds and come back in.
Move up around is trying to autofocus.
Yeah, it is, it's kind of wavy.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It's the goodest I got today, okay?
I got it.
All right, so a couple of different ways to get PC board ties. You can get a big piece of PC board. You can strip down a computer and you can cut your own. Do not call me from the hospital when you have all sorts of injuries from splinters, from fiberglass and everything else. Don't be doing that nonsense, okay? It used to be that you could order from Clover House. Clover House has closed their website indefinitely. It's not out of business. It's not for sale. They just close indefinitely because of family issues and so forth. I love this stuff, but you can also go to the Fast Tracks guys and buy this, okay? So you can buy this instead. And what you'll do is you'll cut off one side and you'll end up with something that looks like this, okay? Oh, I know, before Russ interrupted, I said, if you want to move up, move a chair closer, that's fine as well. Just don't bump the table, especially when I'm soldering, please. Okay, that would be a bad day for all of us. You see pretty well, either here or there. Okay, good. So this is what I buy for the most part when I'm doing turnouts. I have used the Clover House stuff. I like it and I don't like it. The biggest problem is the way that these are manufactured, the different ways. This is kind of laser cut stuff, so it's really nice edges. This is really rough. I think they're using a mini saw or something on it. So I end up spending a lot of time sanding the edges of that to get it smooth. With this, there's a lot of waste. With this, I start at the beginning, work my way to the end. There's very little waste on this, and you'll see this in a minute. I've kept some of these around for when I do crossovers and I need long PC board strips to go across both of those turnouts where they join. So I'm keeping those around for that. But this is what we do first. So there's a couple ways to do this. First thing you need to do is cut them to length, and there's a couple ways you can do that. They have this neat little tool called the tiebreaker, and which basically you can see that they've got different lengths in here. And what you would do is cut these off of the sprue, lay them each into here, and then you cut across the top. It's okay. I don't do that. Okay. What I do instead is I just take the ties, lay it in there. I make a mark. I make a mark. I make a mark. And I go all the way across here. And we're going to do a little bit of cooking show magic here, okay, for these. Okay, so once I've got them all marked, then I'll just take my rail cutters, okay, and right on that little black mark I made, cut it across, this way up here, cut that off. And we'll just cut that right about there. And when you're done, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these ties done. Cool? Does that make sense what we've done so far? Okay, invariably, I always cut them a little long. Oh man, oh, that one's good to go. That's good. This one's a little long, so get out the file, you know, or a lot too long, you just kind of snip it back a little more until you make sure it fits in there pretty well. And if I can't get it out easily with this guy, I'm a little stubborn, I might just sand it or file it down just a little more. Now, one thing I didn't tell you that you really ought to do is get some of the residue off of this manufacturing residue. So I just use a regular old sanding block and and it's done. That's all you need to do. Just get that little bit of residue off of there. All right, let's see if this fits a little better. I'm happy with that. Okay, now if you look closely on here, can you see it on there? It's kind of hard to see. I'm going to pass these guys around, Barbara. Okay, take a look at these guys, and what you'll see is a little notch in the middle of some of the rails. So on my Fast Tracks tool, I've got a little black mark here, and a black mark here, and a black mark here, and so forth. That's where we're going to have to put a gap in the PC board tie. Otherwise, we're gonna have a short big time, right? So what I do after I cut all these PC board ties to size, I just take this same marker and I just make a little black line. Now this one's a little bit different. This is the throw bar. So in the throw bar, I need to have one on the top, one on the bottom, and then you can't really see it from where you are too easily, but there's a little X there. That reminds me, I'm gonna need to put a hole in there for that throw bar arm. Is that making sense? Okay, so normally we'd be doing 10 of these. Next, oh, the other thing I do, I put a little dot on the side closest to me. That's to make it easier when I put these back in. Because when you get down here to the bottom, to the end, you got a notch here, you got a notch here, you got a notch here. If you put them upside down, they're not going to line up right. But if you got that little dot, you're right there. So we'll take this out. Take this out. Couple ways to do this. Somehow you've got to cut across that PC board. You got to cut through that copper to get down to the fiberglass so you don't have a short across. You can use a Dremel tool and just go zip across it. And that works. Is that how we did when you were there? Yeah. It's a little scary, but boy, is it quick. So that's what I had Stan do. That's what Tom did. That's what Joe Fields did as well. On the layout, it's a triangular file, okay? So with that triangular file, we just line it up on that little mark that I made, and that's cut. And then I always do, on both edges, I just do a little zip and a little zip. Because if I'm gonna miss some of that copper, it's gonna be on the ends on the top, okay? Now, if you listen, y'all know who Joe Fugate is?
Yeah.
Model railroad hobbyist. Joe recommends doing the bottom as well. I did that for a long time, and then I went, why am I doing this? His idea was if any solder ever drips down there and so forth, it's possible. I've never had that problem. I do, when I'm doing production, I will do that on the throw bar. So that's all it takes, but you got to do it on all 10. Oh, this one's a little different. So the throw bar, you're going to do that first one. You're going to do that second one. And again, just a little notch, and it doesn't take much. And by the way, if you look at my triangular file up here, you'll find that 2 edges of the triangle file do not have any file on it because I've worn it out by doing so many of these. I'm serious. This one side, man, I could do this all day long and do nothing to my thumbnail. Okay. So now I got to put a hole in there. There's a bunch of ways you can do that. Here it is. You can use a Dremel tool or any other kind of motor tool with a drill in it. That'll work just fine. This is what I use. Little pin vise, because I have more control over it. Okay. That's why I do that. So again, 0.039 wire. First thing I do is I use this little scribe. Try drilling into PC board tie if you don't have a little dot. And I don't mean a dot of ink, a dot. Okay. So you want to punch a little depression in there. It doesn't take much. Just line it up with the middle, about that much. And then it has a place to rest the tip of that drill bit, and you should be good from that point.
That's even more critical if you're using Dremel, because it'll work right.
Oh man, it'll go all over the place, right into your knee. So, yeah. Why am I using a piece of wood? Duh. Okay, so, it seems like, oh man, that's going to take you forever to drill that through there. You know what? It really doesn't take that long. Okay. And because I'm not using a drill press, I kind of rotate this around a little bit so that if I'm off just a little bit, it's equally off, and this whole, we're done. That's how long it takes. It doesn't take very long. Take that out of there. What I'll do next is I'll take one of my sanders here, and I bought these guys off of Amazon recently. It was like $10 for like 80 of them or something. So they're not that expensive, but they're fine grit, like 220 or something like that. Just real quick, because there's a little bit of material coming up. Go through there one more time. And then there's that 039 going right through there. Cool? Okay. You want a little bit, but not a lot of slop in there. Why? Because you don't want this to bind as it goes back and forth. Okay. So you don't want that to be a really, really, really tight. If it is, don't call me. All right. That's all we needed that for. Cool beans. All right. So you guys got the idea how that works? Great. So remember I said we're going to do a little bit of cooking show. This magic little plastic bag here has all the PC boards already ready to go for the turnout we're going to build. So that's going to save us about 15 minutes right there of demo time. Get rid of this, get rid of this. The next thing we want to do is actually cut rail. So I buy the 3-foot long strips because I'm doing so much of this stuff. And because if I'm only doing 18-inch strips, by the time I cut and cut and cut and cut, I got a piece down here that I can't use for anything. And you do enough of these 18-inch ones, if you could put them all together, you'd have a bunch of, so if I do a 36, there's less waste. That's the only reason why. Kind of like we did with the PC board ties. Take a little bit of sandpaper, and I don't know what it is, 120, and just once or twice. And that's just to get rid of some of the gunk that comes on the rail when you first when it comes out of manufacture. Okay, and just to be safe, I'm going to do 2 of these. And I did not buy this rail from Fast Tracks because it will cost you more to ship it from Fast Tracks. I bought it from Scale. I don't know whether Mike or Russ put the order in for me. One of them did. But they gave me a little bit of a discount on it, and I didn't pay shipping, and it came in faster than it would have from Canada. So it was a no-brainer to me. Right. This is code 83 that I'm using. Now, again, you could use code 100, just strip it out of FlexTrack, and the Division 8 stuff works fine for that. The Division 8 stuff will also work well for the Atlas code 83 because the base is the same width, okay? So the first thing I do is, actually, that's pretty good. I'm going to trim this off just a little bit. Make it nice and square. And there you go. Next thing I will do is I'll take a sanding stick, and this is something that Russ and I do. And even though it's a good end on here, I'll just do a little bit on each of these, just dress it up a little bit. And then when I put a rail joiner on there, it's going to slide in a lot easier. Okay. Got it? So all I do is I just dress up each of the little bits here, and that's about all it takes. Okay. Now, what we need to do, cut a lot of rail. So again, with this magic pen, we're going to mark it out here. So I need a piece of straight here. We'll mark it right there. Cut that. Good. Again, because I know I've got a goofy joint because it's the back side of these pliers, of these cutters. I'll do that. Now I need to go one on the angle here. So we'll bring that in here. Mark that. You notice I'm not worrying about whether it's straight in there or not. Doesn't matter right now. I just need to cut it to size. Again, we'll do this side. That's good. Okay, so that's my two stock rails. Now I need to do the points. The points are a little bit different. You can see, hopefully you can see on there, let me move it back a little bit. Oop, move it out that way a little bit. There we go. Okay. There's a little bit of a notch here. That's where the points end. And then they'll go up here. And then you see there's a bend down here. And if you guys got the paper, you can see that. There's a little bend for the guardrail on there. Don't worry about that, right? Don't worry about making the bend. Just go as though it's going straight and mark it off there. We'll do that bend when we actually start forming the rail here in a few minutes. Okay, and then we'll do the other side. This comes up here. That right about there. Oops, 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 oops. Okay, so that's that one. That's that one. That's that one. That's that one. And now I have a little piece of rail left. Whew, did you think we go through 3 feet of rail that quick? Man, it goes quick, doesn't it? Okay, so what are we going to do with this? Well, we're going to use that for one of our guardrails here. Okay. That. Put that real quick. Okay, so we're on to the second one. So we're going to do a frog. So I need two sides of the frog. There's one. That guy. And we'll trim that off real quick. Oh, come on now. There we go. We'll do this side. Trim it off real quick. Good to go. And the last thing we need to do is this other guardrail, which is going to be about that long. I'll just kind of cheat on that. If it's a little long, it's okay. We'll trim it later. Okay, I'm done with that rail. Cool beans. What's next? Filing. Filing is next. So I kind of got this divided out here. So the two tools we'll use, we're going to do the frog first. Okay. If you look at the point form tool, you see that it says point on one side and frog on the other side. It doesn't work the way you think. You put the rail for the frog in the frog side instead of it coming out that way. Okay. The other thing I do, where's my big pen here? There it is. Okay. The other thing I do is I will mark one side, hold this together, mark that side. So that I don't end up with two lefts or two rights. Okay. Same thing with the stock rail. I'll mark the inside of it real quick like, and we're going to do some more with this in a couple minutes. Stock rail, and then stock rail down here. And we'll do the same thing with the points. And that'll tell me which side to actually file off when we get in there. That side. Okay, so you can try and cheat and do both sides of either the frog or the point rails at the same time. I can tell you from experience, don't do that. It's not worth the effort doing that, okay? It is not, it'll cause all sorts of problems when you do that. So what I've done is I inserted the frog rail from down here, usually not long enough, so I'll kind of push it in here a bit. The idea is what you should see on here, and I know it's going to be difficult seeing it on the video, but as you look at the head, you want the inside of it to just barely not show when you push it out of here. Kind of hard to see. From experience, I can tell you that's going to work. I've done this so many times. It's like, I know how far I got to push this thing in here because, you know, I think Ron and Russ are both saying, you know, Fred's built a bunch of these. I'm approaching 100 of these things. So, you know, you just kind of know. Next, take the Allen wrench, tighten it down a little bit, tighten it down a little bit, get out the file. Screw that. Screw that. Get out the grinder. Okay. So you can do it all by hand and there's nothing wrong with that, but the grinder makes it go a little quicker. Can you see that kind of sort of almost? Yeah, close enough. You get the idea anyway. So on these guys, we're going to go on this side here. Okay. So just make sure it's rotating this way. We're going to file off this way. Don't do it the other way. Bad things will happen. So you can't just put it in there and say grind, because that'll heat it up and that'll bend the metal and it'll screw it up. So you got to do a little at a time. So let's do that real quick. How close is that, Rick? Run your hand across it.
Perfect. Oh, yeah. It's something to see.
Is that perfect?
Pretty close,
No.
yeah.
No. No.
Well, I can still a little.
So you're gonna have to spend a little more time doing a little bit of filing. But this is like, you know, maybe a dozen strokes across here, and then it should be good to go. You'll know when it's really flat and level with it. If it does this on the open part and it feels the same over here, you got it. But if you can feel it any kind of grip to it at all, it's not quite there. So that one's done.
Does that jig wear out from running the power across it?
It hasn't, and I've built over 100 of these things probably between me and other guys. Okay, so marks black, put it in, goes on the other side, push it in a bit. Push it in a bit, maybe. That would be about good enough. The Allen wrench, tighten it down again. Turn the magic machine on. Now this one, unfortunately, got the two little guys. Oh well. So that's what we need to do for the frog. Anything terribly complicated so far? Nah. Points. So points go in this end. There's the black side. It goes there. And again, I'm gonna put it in to about the same location, about the same spot in there, just about the same thing in there. Tighten her down. Tighten it down. Turn this guy on. Sounded a little bit different when I did it with the points, didn't it? A little more metal. Okay. Again, just do it flat on there. Don't try and do it back and forth, screw stuff up. Good enough. So this opens up, this opens up. That's done. Grab the other one, go to the other side. Put it in the other side. Tighten it down. Off. These strokes with the file. Now, if you end up putting the points in too far, you'll end up with broken rail web because you'll file right through the web and you'll have the head and the base sitting out there. What do? You snip it off and you put it back in here and you grind it down, you file it down again, and hopefully you get it right the second time. Okay? You know,
Want to make it a little short then?
maybe.
But it's not that.
Or it becomes really short and becomes a frog,
Yeah.
or becomes really, really short and a guardrail, or becomes a scrap load for Mr. Frank Run. We're done with this guy. Now we're going to go use the stockade. Okay. So with the stockade, I need to go back to this guy. So with the stockade, it's a little goofy. So with the stockade, we need to line it up in,
Slide it forward a little bit.
yeah, hang on here. Need to line it up in the
There you go.
fixture, okay? And right at the edge of where the points will go, you need to make a little mark. Because what you're going to do is you're going to grind away where the points slide in. So you need to know where to stop grinding, okay? And of course, that'll also, with the stockade tool, to make sure that you go back far enough and not too far. I do this a little bit differently. I kind of do a little bit of this stuff to make sure I know which side it is. And then I kind of do it on the side here because it's easier to see in the tool when I do that. And that's enough. And then I'll just kind of make a little bit of a mark here as well. Okay. Okay. That's one side. And over here. A little bit different working in here than working at home where I've got everything all laid out and I know where everything is, but it's okay. It's okay. So again, we'll do this. Move this back. Close enough. Again, we'll do the same thing. That's where the front of the points are. So we'll do this little goofy guy and down this way. Get out of there, come across. And again, you see that big black mark on there? You see the big black mark on the other one on the other side? I know which side of the tool to put it in. Because if I slide it in there, I don't see that big black mark, whoops, back it out and put it in the other side. Stockade. Okay, again, put the rail in. Eventually here. Come on now. Slide it in. Oh, I must have tightened that down. Slide it in and across. And now, hopefully you can see that little mark right there by my thumb. And you may not be able to see that in the video. Can you guys barely see that, where that little mark is on there? Kind of, sort of, yes, no? Okay. That's what you want to line up with right at the edge of the stockade. Tighten it down and don't over tighten it. It just needs to be tight enough. You're just grinding here a little bit, okay? Okay, now, again, you could do this. About 10 minutes worth of filing, Tom? Yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Move the grinder back. This is where it gets goofy. So it's got to go with, yeah, down. And then you want to get it at about the right angle. And fortunately, this cheap little machine from not Harbor Freight, from Micromark works fine enough. Okay, so that's good. Turn it on. And this is the one where if you grind too much, it will overheat. When it overheats, metal expands. You've got it tied down on both ends. So when it expands, it's going to go like this. And when it goes like this, it's going to really grind away them. Don't do that. Just what I do here will work just well. It's still a little rough there, okay? So we're gonna have to do some grinding, but that's about as much as I feel comfortable with. But you're gonna see how little it's gonna take here to actually get it there. Doesn't take a whole lot. Bob, do you have a question back there? Or is that a comment?
No,
Oh, okay, that's fine. Right?
Yeah. That's the file from wearing out the jig.
The nickel silver is much softer than the jig well, yeah, than the jig itself, yeah. Yeah. So,
when you see the sparks, that's the jig touching the blazing.
yeah, that's when I'm screwing up. Okay, that guy's good enough. Take that out. Are we ready to build a turnout yet? Man, not quite, almost. Got the other side to do. See, it goes in the other way. Yeah. Put that in. Tie that down, tie that down. Here. So again, same thing. You can hear it kind of gunking across there, but you see how long it takes. It doesn't take long to do this. And think about what I said before. I don't build one at a time. I'm building, well, the last time I started building turnouts, I did 10 right-hand turnouts. It'll end up being 5 crossovers. So I did all the PC board ties, did all that first. I used an old an old egg carton and put the PC board ties for each turnout in a different little container for the eggs. You know?
How much more of these do you have left?
A couple hundred probably.
That's fine.
Yeah, oh, it is. Little at a time, little time. I think that'll do it for that one. And then I did all this and all that. So here's something else, yuck and yuck. Okay, look at my hands already. You know, that's why usually I'll be wearing those guys. I decided not today, kind of because I'm in a hurry. Okay, that's good enough.
Do you have to build any crossings?
I will not build any crossings.
I can't figure out how they do them yet. I can't figure out how you insulate.
Well, I know how they do, and I'm just not gonna do it. Okay, so all the filing is done. Now begins the fun stuff. So when you build these guys, you can use just the Fast Tracks fixture for the turnout to build the frogs. That's the next thing we're gonna do, to build the frog. I don't do that. Okay, I have done that in the past, but what I did, I don't know, a few months ago was buy this frog helper from Fast Tracks. It gunks up the fixture if you build a lot on it, and you know, it just does because of the gunk that you do and because of the flux. And this has a little bit of a gap underneath it and so forth. I think it just works a little better. It certainly works for me. If all you're doing is for the AP, don't even think about buying one of these. Do not waste your money doing that. You don't need to do that. If you're just going to do it for the AP and you're going to do it on your own, just do it right here in the Fast Tracks tool. Okay, just do that. But I'm going to use this. I like it and I don't like it. So what we'll do, where's the sharp end? There's the sharp end, is right here. Okay, so we're doing a number 6. We're doing a number 6. They go in here. What I don't like about this tool is I don't think that I don't like that they did not make the troughs, if you will, for the base of the rail any deeper than they are. I would like them to be a little deeper. I like them to be as deep as they did on the fixtures themselves. And it's a little bit of a challenge sometimes to get everything lined up in here, but we'll get it there. We'll get it there. There we go. All right. So we'll slide this up here. You guys see the points coming together, the tip of it? Okay, what you want to do is get it so the tips are together, but you don't want it to be so tight that it starts spreading those points apart. If you push it too far, it will do that. Yeah, they are real thin. But they will hurt. So you want them to touch and have just a little bit of an oomph. And sometimes it's just a matter of a little bit of experience and you'll get it there. Okay. So then I'll put a weight on top of that. This is where I usually turn one of these over. Okay. Get some flux out.
Push the jig forward.
How's that?
More better.
More better? More gooder? What we probably ought to have done is move the camera back, but I'm not gonna screw with it now.
I'll use the micro brush.
So I use a micro brush for the flux, yeah. These are from Fast Tracks, but you buy them anywhere, you know. In my opinion, the smaller the head, the better. You don't need much flux to begin with. So we're just gonna kind of do a little bit here, and remember, oops, it slid back on me.
And that's a paste, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, some of this turned to liquid, Rick. So we'll just put a little bit of flux up here. Sometimes I'll put it in the middle before I put it together, but that little bit of flux will flow down there when we start heating this up. So you don't have to have what some people consider as a really fancy soldering system here. It's just a Weller that really, didn't cost that much. I run it at 750 degrees. Okay, that's what I run it at. It works pretty well for me. I think Russ has the same thing. I might need to get some solder out. I think. All right, so here comes the solder, and this is really, really, really thin stuff. The Fast Track stuff is pretty thin as well, but not quite as. I like this stuff a little better. So it's a matter of just soldering this. Let her get nice and hot. Yeah. And what we want it to do, we want that solder to flow down inside of there. You're not trying to get a whole lot on top, because if you do, guess what? You're just going to have to file it off anyway, or your trains will not go through there. So that's about what I do. This is one of the weak points on the turnouts. So when we get done, we actually put a little bit of solder on the bottom, but this is at the very end after the turnout is otherwise completed. If you do it too soon, you're going to have a big glob on the bottom, and then it won't match down flat with the PC board tie. So don't do it yet. Okay. We got a frog. So first thing I do, I reach for my sanding stick and just real quick across the top. And then what I do, I go across the top and just down a little bit. I don't want that to be a sharp point. I want it to be a little bit rounded. Now, I'm not talking about, like a tennis ball rounded, just instead of a sharp point, a blunt point, so that if a wheel is just a little bit out of alignment, it's going to give it a glancing blow instead of going, oh, sharp point, I don't know what to go. Oh, I'll go ahead and derate. Okay, so that blunt point, it'll go like this instead of going chunk and derailing. That's me, and it seems to work well. Okay, we're done with that tool. Again, if all you're going to do is for the AP, don't bother with it. But I'm building hundreds of these things. Okay. So you asked how many turns I have done so far. I have 40 in operation right now, and we only have phase 1 and phase 2 of the railroad with rail.
Wow.
And there's 12 phases. Now, there's 2 phases that have no turnouts. They got trestles and stuff like that. All right, so let's bring this back.
Answer.
Say what?
The answer is wow.
Okay. But it's what I want to do. All right, Ron, is that in frame?
Yep.
Okay, so we got this piece of rail that has a chunk out of it. This is going to go here, but it's curved. That's straight. So all you do is gently, and you're just putting a little bit of pressure on it. You don't want to bend it. You just want to put a little bit of pressure on it and bring your hand across it, and that will, for the most part, straighten it out. For the most part. Pretty close. Okay, so that's going to go in there. Nope. And then we've got the other side. So what we want to be able to do is lay this down and have it go straight in there. Well, that's pretty close, isn't it? That's pretty darn close. If it doesn't, you do the same thing. You just draw it out. You put a little bit of pressure on it and just kind of bend it gently, and it'll work for you. Okay. So you want it to and it doesn't have to exactly lay in there, but I will tell you, the closer you get it to just laying there by itself, the happier you're going to be in the end. Really. Okay. All right. I'm happy with that. Happy enough with that. I'm happy enough with this. Put that in there. Get out of the points. I need to weigh this down. Oh, wait a minute. We can't do that. We need TVC board ties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But trust me, it's a lot easier to do that bending before you put that in. So while we're at it, take a look at the points. That's the Sharpie one on this side. So that doesn't fit in there very well, does it? Nope. So guess what? We're going to go down here. We give a little bit of a bend. What do you think?
Good.
I've done this before. Once or twice. So the other thing we want to do with these, remember I said down here we want this little angle. So we've got it all lined up in the front, lay it down in the trough for the rail, go down the far end here, and if you look at this tool, you'll see there's a little notch here. That's where you're going to bend. Take this marker, take your Sharpie, make a little mark on there. Then you take the track cutters and you're going to do a V. You're going to cut this way in the base. You're going to cut this way in the base. And what it does in that base, it just puts a little V like this. And then put your thumbnail on either side. Give it just a little bit of a bend. Okay. Then when you lay this back in there, oops, too much. You move back a little bit. Put it down there, in there. And
6-inch gauge and bend for.
pretty close. Now this is a little bit long yet, so I'll just mark it. Cut it. Make sure it's still good to go. That's good to go. Now, here's a little trick. As the wheels come across this, they're going to go on this side of it. I don't want that hard edge there, so I'll take a file, and it doesn't matter what size, and I'll just knock that corner down a little bit. Kind of a little bit of a chamfer on that edge. Okay? And again, it's just like with the frog, you put that kind of bulb on the end, same sort of thing here. And then you can kind of trim up the rest of it, whatever works for you. So let me do the other points. The nice thing is these guys get to stay pretty straight. And we're going to mark that. And again, yeah, always have to do this number. A little bit of a chip there, and a little bit of a chip there. Bend it just a little bit. Comes across, maybe just a little more. We're going to trim that a little bit. No, I didn't mark it. Here you go, and that's pretty close. And then we're going to take the file in, we're going to file that down a little bit, do the ends to the bottom. When I laid that down there, I wasn't happy with this. I think it bent a little bit too much to the left, so I'll bend it a little bit more to the right. Lay that in there, good to go. Now, again, these were done back at home. So you didn't have to sit here and watch me do this nonsense for, 20 plus minutes while I did all the filing and cutting and so forth on those PC board ties. Any questions so far about what we've done, guys?
Is it stiff enough where you don't have to worry about it twisting when you're trying to put any bends on it?
Yeah, I've never had a real problem with it, Rick. Yeah. There's going to be a little bit to it, but minor. So, and again, this is the part, the part takes a while, but, and you see where I put all the little dots on there? Done. Okay, first thing we'll do is we'll do the outside rails. So put this guy in that little channel there. Oops, whoop. I had those backwards. Close, but not quite. There we go. Okay. Wondering why that wouldn't look right. Go, and down it goes. Close enough. This guy down there. Okay. So what I do is run these out a little bit further. I'm going to put a weight on it. I get it in there pretty well. Good enough. Enough. Moving back like that. Put some weight here. Now the fun begins, really. So grab some flux again. It doesn't take much. A little dot here. And if you want to get carried away with this, you can also solder the inside, but I don't bother with that. When I'm doing this at home, I'm taking a little more time than I'm going to be today and get a little more heat on it, stay there a little longer. And usually what you'll see some solder gunking into the inside as well, just a little bit. If you really want to, you can, kind of touch it in there because it should be hot enough to run a little bead in there if you really want to, but I generally don't. But this is all it takes. It doesn't take much, Not like you need a whole lot of solder in there. There you go. Okay, those four done. Moving on down here. Grab these two guys up here. For these two especially, you don't want to solder on the inside because your point rails are going to come in there and you don't want anything at all obstructing them coming or hindering them from getting really tight in there on the inside of those rails. Okay. Skip the throw bar. Do not solder the throw bar. Why not? Because it's got to move. That's why. We will solder it, but we'll solder it only to the tips of the point rails. Okay, so again, we get in there, get it hot. Solder, well, a little more solder. Here we go. Side. Okay. I generally start at the middle here, and then I work my way to either end. It seems to work better for me doing that. It keeps things a little bit more in alignment for me. I'm going to go ahead and gunk up a bunch of these. The other thing is on the very end of this, what Bob Weinheimer and I do is actually add one more PC board tie at the far end of this. And the reason we do that is because we believe that once we put all the gaps in here, it's not quite strong enough without that extra piece of PC board tie out there. I'm not going to bother to do that today. I'll just tell you that when you look at, Ron, give me those real quick. Okay. Yeah, all three of those. Yeah, thanks. When you look at these, you'll see that if I line it up here, the dark brown ones are the PC board ties. You'll see I have an extra PC board tie down here. Well, again, the reason I do that is because there's a gap here and that would only be secured with the one, but put that other one down there. It just gives it a little more rigidity when you're moving them around. But here's the other thing. If you're building them and putting them on the layout, so what? So what? Also, when I am building these to do crossovers, I don't even build them as long as I'm doing here, or else I'd be cutting stuff off to make them fit on 2-inch centers. So, sometimes you got to kind of customize this stuff to fit the particular situation you're in for that turnout or that group of turnouts that you're building, and whatever works for you and the situation you're in. Just one, oh, a little more on that. Yep, there we go. There. This is going to go together really quick here. Okay, so that's the core done. The next thing that goes in there is the frog. Well, we've already got the frog soldered. It's already ready to go. So what you do is you put this thing in and then you push it back about as far as it'll go. Okay, and it's solid in there then. I've just learned from experience, just do it that way and you're happier in the long run. Okay. Again, a little bit of gunk on here. Okay. A little bit of gunk. Now, you might notice I'm not putting any flux on the front of the frog. The reason is because when I put the point rails in here, they're going to have these guardrails here. If I put solder in there, they're not going to go in very well, are they? So I don't do that. So it's a little flaky. Again, when we get done, we're going to flip it over And you're gonna see that we're gonna put some solder down there, right under the frog. That was a gunky bad job of it, let me tell you that. Don't use that as an example. It's a bad example. All right, so we'll put this on here, put this on here. And I'm just using those two tools, the stockade and the point form tool, just to give a little bit of weight to hold this down while I'm soldering it. There we go. Put the other side, that's good. Okay, this is where it gets a little snarky. Careful in here, because there's a gap right between these two rails on that PC bow tie. Cool? Okay, so this is the place where if I'm doing this on my railroad, because it's such a tight thing there, I'm probably gonna spend a little bit of time and put a little bit of solder in. Not today, I'm not gonna take the time. And honestly, it'll be fine like that. Cool beans? Points are next. In fact, all we got left are points and guardrails. So when someone says, I can build a fat track turnout in 10 minutes. Yeah, once you got everything cut, you can. But even then, you know, even with my PowerPoint, this is not taking that long, guys. Okay, get this in here, make sure it all lines up good. That's good. Put this on there. So if you notice on the tool here, or if you take a look on the handout I gave you, take a look along there and you'll see that it says hinged and solid. You guys all see that? Anybody not see that where it says hinged and solid? Everybody sees it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The reason for that is you can build hinged turnouts like the old Atlas switches that had hinged points. Do not do that. Okay, don't do that. The only time I would ever consider doing that is if I was doing a three-way or something like that. I don't have the room to do the solid points for that. Other than that, I would not do that. So when you're doing the soldering here, you don't want to solder to the hinge, to the one that's marked H. You just want to do the one that's marked S. I'm not happy with that. Of course, that's the nice thing. Once you learn how this stuff all works, guess what? You can do this stuff on you can do some maintenance on your commercial turnouts as well. There we go. All right, that's better. Oh, I'm happy. Okay, it slipped on me. Slipped on me, not happy with that. And then a little bit here. And that's good. Put the other one in there. Barbara, you still with me?
Yep.
Are you lost yet? Okay.
I did recognize that sound like you meant for the basement, so when you try that drive.
Love you too. All right, so we can do the same thing on the other side here. Tie these guys down. Back there. The one thing I am not going to do today, I am not going to cut the gaps in here. You know, I'd have to bring the Dremel tool along and yada, yada, and so forth. But, you know, you guys will see everything except that. And we're like almost done with this anyway at this point. Okay, we're going to tie down this guy and tie down that guy. And of course, I'm not going to put the quick sticks on there either, those wood ties. I'm not going to bother with that.
You have 3 minutes.
Well, it's going to take me longer than 3 minutes. Sorry. Well, there you go. Well,
Good point.
all right, so guardrails. Okay, the guardrail, that's about right. And you got these little guys on the ends here, and what you can do is just put a little bend on it. Put a little bend on it. Make sure you got them bending the same way. Make sure they'll fit inside there, and that's a little bit much of a bend, believe it or not. It doesn't take much. Here. There we go. File, dump it in there. That's good. Same thing I did, the end of the other rails, a little bit of a chamfer on the end here, doesn't take much, just a little bit. That's one down. Make sure this is about the right length. Yep, it's good. Again, just a little bit of a bend. Bend. Here. And a little bit much. Back. Back. Do. Chamfer. Chamfer on that end. Door. Down. Down. Get a little stubborn, that's why I do that guy. More. Okay. So solder. 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 Yes. Or I take it out of here, do anything else with it. Check with this guy. So when I built my very first one, flangeways are good, flangeway is good, flangeway is good, flangeway is good. When I built my very first Fast Tracks turnout, it was at the Indianapolis NMRA National Convention. Oh, when was that? A long time ago.
2016.
2016, yeah. And when I did that, the AP guy the standards guy who was responsible for civil was there, and he judged my track work. And in those days, is a little tighter requirement than it is now. What's the requirement now, Mark?
Go 3 different turnouts.
And
Yeah, I got to run through.
and
Oh, you have to demonstrate something.
you have to demonstrate that you can roll stuff through it, and that's it. Okay, I'm missing a tool, and that's it. You just have to be able to roll a locomotive through it on its own power. Do not read more into that than you need to. In fact, read nothing into it. Demonstrate that you can run a locomotive through the track work on its own power. What about dead rail? What about dead rail? Run a locomotive through on its own power. When I did mine, I did a little 40-tonner DC locomotive. Why? Because I only had a little bit of flex track on either end to make it go through it. You know, that's all I needed, and it worked. Okay, that's right. However, when I did mine, that wasn't the requirement. It had to meet all the standards of this gauge. And I screwed up in one little thing. One of the guardrails is just a little close, because instead of going flat in the tool, it was just at a little bit of an angle. The guy goes, nope, redo. He said, but all you have to do, just heat up the solder, move it over a little bit, and you'll be good to go. And he just stood there while I did it and said, pass. Okay. But, okay, now we're into the hardest part of this, in my opinion, and that is the points. So you do one set of points while it's in the tool. You take it out and you do the other side. Oh, part I don't like. So heat it up, put some solder. Don't get carried away. Don't get carried away. What you don't want it to do is float under there into that straight stock rail, right? Because then it'll never move again. If you do, then I'm looking for my flat file here, Ron. Not this one. It's a little flat file. Someone can find it for me. Little flat file. It's here somewhere. Trust me.
There it is.
Yay! Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
You know what? Just like at home, I knew this was somewhere, and Barbara goes, here it is, where you've looked 17 times. Does this not happen to you, Mr. Johnson? That's right, except at your house, it's not Barbara, it's...
The worst thing about it is you're searching for something and you pick it up to look underneath.
So Some of you guys that have been around for a while and have done tune-ups on your cars may recognize this file. A points file. And what do we use it for here? Points. That's a different kind of points. So if you do this right, this points file is the same width as the gap between your points on your turnout. So if that solder gets in there a little bit, you can just go a little bit. When you buy these, if you go buy these at an automotive store, and they still do sell them, make sure it has some file on the edges, because not all of them do. This tool has it on one, but not the other.
One's a blind set.
Yep, just make sure. I actually got some I picked up and took back. It was blind on both sides. I went, no. Worthless. All right. So now we pick this out of here. I'm using my fingernails underneath the head. Pull gently, and out it comes. We're not done because it's not attached on the other, it's not attached on the other side. So what we'll do is use a pair of these guys, okay? Hold that one that we just did tight. Hold that tight, okay? We'll line this up outside the tool. Just move it back to the edge. So it's like off by one tie, and that keeps everything in alignment as much as possible, okay? Then on the other side, what I use is just a scrap piece of PC board tie. I'll jam it up here. And what you want is this gap in here to be the width of the points on the NMRA gauge. And that's just about perfect. Again, I've done this a couple times. I know about how far this goes up here. The first dozen times you guys do this, you'll screw around with it, you'll get frustrated. Just kind of remember it's a little bit further ahead than that tie, and you just want it about that wide. Now I'm going to put another one here to hold it down.
Instead of that tweezer clamp, you can also use a spring-loaded clothespin that's been blunted on the front end.
You know, I've used something similar to that, Bob, and I'm not saying don't use that. In fact, I would suggest try that. I like this because it's out of my way. Yeah, it's out of my way. And the clothespin is too high. Yeah, it's too high. I've used a bunch of different stuff. This works for me. So you know what? We're done. Except what I would do now is I would take my marker, and you got the paper template, but if you look on my tool, you can see I've got arrows here. See those arrows? That's where I need to take and put a gap in there so that they will work with my toy trains that run on electricity and not short out, okay? The last thing, I'm not going to take the time to do this. The last thing I would do is flip this over, and I would add a bead of solder here and a bead of solder there to tie that frog down a little better, okay? You got all that? Okay. We're not quite, we're so close though. How many of you are wondering what I was going to do with this? It's going to scare you when I do it. I know it is. Because it scared Stan, I think, the first time when I told him you had to do this. So now you've got all this gunk on here from the flux and solder, and you got bits of solder that are here and there, and they're kind of this way and that way. First thing I do is I take my sanding stick and I run it across here just a couple times. And I tell you what, if it's smooth, we're done with that. Then I take this. This is going to hurt your feelings. And we do this. Whoa, looks like I didn't have one solder joint that was good. That's okay. I'm quick with it. Which one came loose? That one right there. Okay. So take that here. Get it close. This guy's still hot. There we go. Guess what? Now it's good to go. Okay, so there was a teaching point there. It was kind of intentional. If you do that wire brush and something comes loose, you don't have a solder joint. Put it back in, put it back. You're good to go. It isn't that hard. Okay, it isn't that hard. And you know it's engaged because there you go. So the final test is right here. You take a pair of trucks, take a set of trucks, you put it on this guy. But let me do it this way so my other guys can see it outside out there. Put it on this guy, and it ought to run smoothly across this. Jackson, come on up here. Smoothly across this. Okay. So just run it back and forth like that. Put it on the other set. Yep.
Does not want to agree.
Oh, wait a minute.
So I don't agree with him.
What do you think, dude?
Very cool. Very cool.
Try that with an Atlas turnout. And you're gonna get a clunk as you go through the frog. These guys, you won't. It'll be just so slick and smooth.
When you gap your tracks, how come you don't go back afterwards and put a piece of styrene in there?
'Cause I don't.
You just-
Because I don't.
I mean,
'Cause I
head
don't.
scale,
Yeah, I
it's
don't.
a 1 foot wide gap.
Yeah, with scale, I think I would.
And, so it'd still be like 6 inches.
So I visited with a guy, I visited his railroad, can't remember his name, gorgeous model railroad. He hand lays all of his track. When he does the turnouts, he puts a piece of plastic in there, smooths it out, paints it out, and then he takes a sharpening stone, a big flat sharpening stone, and goes across all the oh my God, it's gorgeous. Yeah. Not quite that crazy. Crazy, but not quite that crazy. Yeah. I could, but
Yeah.
honestly, by the time you paint it up and put it in place, you'll never see it. Okay, we're done for what we're gonna do today. Again, the last thing I need to do, I need to solder this on the bottom, not a big deal. I need to put some gaps in here, just like I showed you. And this is done, other than if I want to, I can put it on here. Questions, comments, historical allegory. I know we went long. Hopefully you all got something out of it. Thank you. Okay. So the offer stands that I started at the beginning. If you want to build the 3 pieces of track work, or if you just want to do a single turnout for the AP or for your own edification, whatever, reach out to me. You can find me easy enough at a meeting or train show or wherever, or just groups.io, just email me, whatever, and let me know, and we'll set up a date and we will make it happen. My only requirement is, it's $6 a turnout, basically. But that's for the turnout, because that's about $6 worth of material right there. And you saw what we went through here, so you can just, kind of add it up in your head, see what it is. And then it's yours to walk out the door. So $6 for the one, or if you want to do 30, and as I showed you the numbers, I'm not making any money on it. I don't want to make any money on it. I want you guys to do it, but anybody else though? Anything? All right, Russ, we're done.